Hello, welcome back to Downforce Debrief. I'm your co-host GB, and today we're going to be looking at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and we've also got a spicy off-topic segment coming up on Creator Series as well towards the end of this episode. As always, I'm joined by Alex, or as he likes to be called off air, Lord Gillen. Alex, how you doing? How do you enjoy the race? Come on, straight off the bat, give us your overview, your rating out of 10.
Well, thank you for that. It'll be Sir Gillen next week if you wouldn't mind. But yeah, banger, to be fair. The Bahrain Grand Prix was right up there for me. Lando Norris's race, 1 out of 10. Overall, the race enjoyment, though, 9 out of 10. I genuinely, at least 8.5. Genuinely really good race. I enjoyed it. GB, thoughts on Lando in the race?
I'm just processing the amount you just like. What out of Lando, blimey. Jesus. I mean, slightly harsh. Let's be honest. What happened at the start? I don't know. I don't really know what went through his head when he was like moving around on the grid, and obviously Max clocked it straight away. It was another race of mistakes, clearly. But I mean, he still did all right to get back up to P3 in the end. I must admit, I was expecting him to get George Russell, which is probably more testament to Russell. But 1 out of 10, really, for Lando?
Okay, we'll park that for a minute. Let's just talk about the race in general. I genuinely really enjoyed it. We will come back to Lando, don't worry. We're not just going to leave it there. Yep. But we'll talk more generally first before we go in too hard on, or I go in too hard on Lando. I just thought it was a banger. Like, it had strategy variety. The 3 compounds being quite different to how they normally were was great. We had lots and lots of overtakes, stark contrast to Suzuka. We had an easy winner, but welcome to F1. You know, I thought it was really good. We had some stand-up performances as well. 8 out of 10. I'm going to go for it. No, 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10? Wow.
Yeah.
Fair play. I actually went for a 7 out of 10, which,
okay.
I mean, look, for me, I'm going to be cliche and say you cannot get a 10 out of 10 race, because it is that is a literal perfect race with all scenarios being the most entertaining.
No, but it's relative to every other race, right? Like, whatever your best race of all time is, that's a 10. So if you have a race, if next week's race is better than that race, it's a 10 out of 10. Is that not? It's just relative rather than being perfect.
Well, in that case, then it's going to need to be my favorite race of all time to be a 10, which I guess will, Anyway, 7 out of 10 for me is high praise. The reason I've not gone higher is purely because we didn't actually get a fight for the win. That was kind of nailed on with how quick the McLaren was, and also how well Piastri drove the whole weekend. So that kind of obviously took away what could have been a spicy fight for the win. I mean, imagine if you ignored Piastri, imagine what finish that would have been, Russell and Norris at the ends. But look, let's not hide away from the fact that, as you said, loads of overtakes, complete stark contrast to what we saw at Japan the week before, and also China. So almost a real refreshing race, really. We wanted to see overtakes. We wanted to see action. We got really lucky and treated with a safety car, which obviously just meant a complete mix-up of strategies and tyres. And 7 out of 10. Maybe I could go a little bit higher, but I'm pretty happy with that.
I've calmed down now, 8 out of 10. I think I was a bit lofty, especially if you factor in like wet races and stuff. I just liked that there was constantly stuff going on. So yeah, you could overtake. It wasn't the most overtakes I've ever seen. You could overtake. There was some genuine strategy in there. I really liked that. We even had like the DRS issues and stuff. There was just constantly things happening. We had incidents and all these other things. So it was just the whole race was just intriguing. And I didn't have a moment where I sort of thought, this is dragging a bit. I wouldn't mind skipping this, whereas that wasn't the case for Suzuka. But yeah, all right, I've come to 8 out of 10. Fine, 8 out of 10. I think we can maybe meet in the middle on that one.
One big reason why it was so good. 2-stop instead of a 1-stop.
Absolutely.
How long have we been banging on about this? I mean, it's not just us. It's everyone else. We all want the 2-stop races. Slightly off topic, but again, this almost... I know I'm very controversial with my Monaco take, but this almost makes me look forward to Monaco a little bit. If this is a sign of what a 2-stop race can deliver, then who knows what's possible. So 2-stop race. Obviously the safety car did change that slightly. But yeah, it's just so much better. It's just so much better when Pirelli take the right tires that don't just, you've got soft tires lasting half a race, that doesn't happen. Then all of a sudden, teams don't know what's going on too much. You had teams going on the hards, like Red Bull with Verstappen, which was the wrong call. And it just made it really exciting. I loved it. It's big
Do
positive.
you know what's interesting though about that is that was actually the exact same tyres that we had in Suzuka. They didn't go softer. It was the C1, C2, and C3. So it's the same tyres, which surprised me. I was ready to be like, oh, it was because it was softer tyres, yada yada. It wasn't. It was a different track, but it was also the same tyre allocation as last year, C1, C2, C3, that last year's Bahrain. So they didn't go softer year on year. Obviously, they're different compounds. The actual tyres may be softer than last year, but in terms of the actual allocation, C1, C2, C3, which surprised me. But it seemed to be interesting, though, because it was limited by rear temperature, really. It's a traction circuit, right? So it seemed to be limited by rear temperature. So if you're being held back by that anyway, it didn't really seem to matter what tyre you had on. It seemed to be that the hard... If you're limited by rear temps anyway, the fronts just weren't grippy enough and there wasn't enough wear to worry about that. The medium was a kind of good middle ground, and the soft did actually start to have a little bit of wear, which was the issue, and probably even more overheating. So it was a weird one where all three tyre compounds kind of... The hard got a lot of stick, but it wasn't a horrendous tyre, the hard. It was all right. We were seeing people more or less hold on. But the mediums were just kind of I guess it's almost like the mediums were the best of a bad bunch almost in Bahrain. None of the tyres, didn't seem to enjoy any of them, which was interesting. But yeah, it mixed up a lot and it made for a really intriguing race, so not complaining.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's an interesting point you mentioned on taking the same compounds, because it doesn't surprise me too much, because obviously Pirelli set the tyre compounds out of the 5 available for each race weekend based on obviously the track and also the expected like weather conditions. Bahrain, we know it's in a desert, it's going to be roasting hot. It's generally a fairly high downforce track. So I don't know. Maybe they expected it to be warmer at Japan, maybe, and that would have caused a bit more deg. It's an interesting point. It's kind of more on the point of last week, but it's still topical because last week we were talking about, hang on, why are we using these tires? They're clearly like too durable. And then all of a sudden, as you said, same tires at Bahrain, and now we've got an absolute banger race. So it almost goes to highlight the importance of Pirelli taking the right tires to the race weekend. It really does make or break the race sometimes.
It was also the tarmac a little bit as well, because it's really abrasive tarmac, right? Which apparently I was hearing Sky commentary say at the start of the race that they haven't relayed it at all in like 25 years, whatever, which is insane. Like, that's lasted so well. But obviously the climate is why you don't get much rain, and it never, the reason we have horrible roads in the UK is because, we get cold winters and stuff and lots of rain, which is always bad for the roads. So that's why, but still, like, that's impressive. But yeah, just really abrasive tarmac. So particularly when it's a traction limited circuit, they just sort of tore the tyres apart. But as I said, not complaining. I enjoyed it a lot.
I think, and look, moving on slightly, let's still talk about the race, but I want to talk about Mercedes. I feel like I'm trying to think of a team that surprised more than Mercedes. I mean, look, we know they're a fast team. They've not exactly been sandbagging and slow in previous weekends, but I feel like this race weekend was really like a bit of a statement from Mercedes of look, we're here, we're fast. And clearly, I think maybe they're a bit more sensitive to like temperatures and weather conditions for their car to be operating stronger than, say, McLaren, that just seemed strong all round. But Mercedes were no joke. Russell did a great job himself, despite a lot of issues, which we'll go into in a second. But Mercedes they're a quick car. They're not that far off McLaren. And you look at how well Antonelli's driving. Really, the team strategy kind of cost him with whatever they were doing with this boxing again for soft under the safety car. That aside, Antonelli, I thought drove very well with some of his moves. And you got to say that they're looking good. It's looking good for them this season. What did you make of Mercedes?
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially if you factor in the last couple of years, the ground effect era, for them to be this year quicker than both Red Bull and Ferrari, it seems at the moment, just about. It is impressive. Yeah, I agree. Their car is genuinely really decent. And as you said, I think it seems to be the working window. Red Bull seems to struggle with the car being on a bit of a knife edge, just got a really small working window that if, like in Suzuka with Max, you can just about get it right, you're really quick. But if you fall a little bit out of that, like, literally 1 week later, look at the turnaround performance of Red Bull. I know he forwarded that win a little bit by being Max Verstappen, but he was still Max Verstappen this week and just couldn't do anything. Like, he was last place at one point. Absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, I am interested to see though, because do you remember I said that the two teams that capitalized most on the flexi wings were Mercedes and McLaren, and obviously we've got this rule change coming in for the Spanish Grand Prix. I feel like it's not going to change the form massively, but we might see just enough paring back of their performance maybe to make it really close to the top four, because it's already pretty close. But if that nerfs them by a tenth or two per lap, it's going to be mega close.
Yeah, and obviously by then it's touted that Red Bull are bringing a massive upgrade package for Imola, I believe, which is not that far away. So yeah, that could be spicy, because Red Bull are definitely off the pace at the moment. So yeah, it's shaping up really nicely, and thanks to Piastri winning instead of Lando, I think
my goat.
What's the gap now? I think the gap
3
at the top
points.
is like 3 points. There you go. 3 points. So it is all to play for, and it's getting very exciting. So yeah, not just a banger race, but also kind of made me quite excited seeing how fast Russell was at the end, and also how good Mercedes were on strategy. I think a lot of us, myself included, were questioning their choice to put on soft tires on Russell's car. I think he even said it was audacious at the time. And I was like, well, he's just going to get eaten up by Lando and Leclerc. And in reality, Leclerc struggled on the hard tires. Lando was on the better tire, the best tire, the medium. And Russell just made it work. His pace didn't really drop. He was all right. So
yeah, the fact that Leclerc on the hards, I know the hards were struggling, but the fact that Leclerc wasn't all over him, Leclerc faded away from him. And it's just because the hards were so bad, right? They're like, the safety car came at a bit of an inconvenient time. I think that was always their plan, was to go soft. They probably would have done another, I don't know, 10 laps maybe even on the medium before going to the soft, but obviously kind of forced the box when they did because of the safety car. But the hard was just so bad, and like you said, it was the right choice. It was an audacious choice, because it was, but it was clearly the right choice. And the way he held on to P2 from Norris was unbelievable. But maybe that's more about Norris than Russell.
Yeah, and look, moving on from Mercedes onto Red Bull. Very surprised at them, actually. Not only did they strategically get it wrong with Verstappen, which you just don't tend to see. Red Bull tend to get these kind of crucial strategy calls right. That, you know, it's quite underrated how strong their strategy team are. But also their pit stops were awful. They've the first batch of stops from Yuki and Max. I think it was, I don't know whether it's like the release timing light. It was flashing yellow instead of turning green, which meant that obviously the drivers were sat there waiting for the green light to go. That's what caused the delay. So it wasn't like the pit crew kind of made a mistake there, to be fair. I'm not sure why it did that, whether it was just some tech malfunction or what happened there. But then they went up to, I think it was Max's second stop. They added something like 3-4 seconds onto the pit stop to make it like a 6.3 second stop or something, from delaying one of the tires going on. And I'm just there thinking, this is so unlike Red Bull. You know, on the weekend, which you could argue Max driving the car that he was driving was clearly struggling. This is the weekend that you just don't want to mess up on pit stops and strategy. And it just all went wrong. I mean, yeah. Did you see the pit stop errors?
Yeah, so they said it was some sort of, I think it was a wiring loom issue in the sort of gantry of their pit box. So clearly, yeah, it didn't go green. It's an automated system. I think the idea is that as soon as the wheel guns have detected a certain amount of torque has been applied, then, you know, once all four have done that, it goes green, and the rear drag's been dropped, it basically goes green, which obviously didn't happen. But to be fair to them, there was only about a minute between Verstappen's pit stop and Tsunoda's pit stop. So, like, I guess they kind of hoped that was a one-off, but they probably should have been a bit more ready, because a minute is long enough to be like, okay, we just had an issue, and be ready on the radio to be like, go, go, go sort of thing. Because I think Tsunoda, I feel like he lost a bit less than Max, but not much less. But yeah, a bit of a weird issue, but I don't know. These things happen. Sky Commentary were talking about, oh, you know, bring back the lollipop men. But like, you know, it's a one-off issue. They will fix it. It's clearly worth it, because you get, you know, zero reaction time for the lollipop man. And it's in theory less to go wrong. But obviously in this case, it didn't work out for them. But yeah, it was a bit of a shocker from them, because like I said, it wasn't just that traffic light issue. They also had a bit of a shocker of a second stop. So yeah, not a good weekend for Red Bull all round, I think it's fair to say.
And honestly, if you'd have, I don't know, if you'd have told me this was going to happen the other way around for Ferrari, for them to have a strategy masterclass, I'd be like, nah, mate, you're waffling. There's no way Red Bull throw and Ferrari nail it. But Ferrari, I mean, they were kind of screwed a little bit by the safety car at the end, I guess. I think they were really on for a good result with Leclerc with their strategy. I know they went 2 mediums, which was a risk. And I was actually sat watching with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, like when the safety car came out, it's like, yeah, this is the downside of kind of being on one tire compound this whole race, you've now unfortunately put all your eggs in one basket and you have to go for the less desirable tire for the final stint. But I mean, how likely was a safety car at Bahrain at that stage? You know, I would. It's just unlucky. You can't plan your safety car. You can't plan your strategy around that, can you? So
it was unlucky. The thing I was surprised though was they did the exact same strategy for both, and like it wasn't clear cut because they were the only people to do it that was the best strategy. So why they literally picked them on the same lap to the same compounds? I think both times did they? They definitely double stacked at least once. So like. Sure, especially at the end there when everyone was saying the hards are bad, yada yada yada. Surely you put like maybe Hamilton on the soft to edge your bets a little bit, but they didn't. They just did the exact same. Which, yes, it was a decent strategy. It was great to see them have that. It wasn't a massive offset, was it, in the second stint? But they were so fast at that point, so it was good. But just I would just like to see them mix it up a little bit with each car rather than just doing the exact same strategy. Because then if it goes wrong, as it did, then you're shafted.
Yeah, I mean, my interpretation from that was almost a way less extreme, but almost similar to Suzuka, where we saw that cars needed a massive tire offset advantage to make an overtake or challenge. Obviously, much less so at Bahrain. Clearly, it's a much better track for overtaking. But even so, it felt like that's what they were doing, because where there might be cars on similar tires, we could see it with Lando on Russell at the end. Lando clearly had a better car with better tires, but he still struggled to overtake with the dirty air. So, I mean, that's why I'm putting it down to a strategy masterclass. I think the way they played it with both cars, it just allowed Hamilton to crack on and do some of the most aggressive moves I've seen from him in ages.
Yeah.
Leclerc as well drove fantastically. So, I think they did really well. And I think if you're a Ferrari fan, you're probably a bit disappointed to see that safety car come out when it did. So,
and you're absolutely right to mention Hamilton, because I agree the moves he was pulling there were the best I've seen from him for quite a while. You could see he really got confidence in that car now to do those moves, and they weren't like outrageous like the best moves we've ever seen. Don't get me wrong, but they were the best moves I've seen Hamilton do for a number of years. Honestly, since probably we're talking like 2021 level of time. So clearly he's getting some confidence in that car. I think he's doing really well. Driver of the day, maybe a bit generous, but we know it's a bit of a popularity contest, so I'm not sure about that. But it was still a decent race. I mean, I think he gained 4 positions. Let me double check that. Yes, he gained 4 positions, so that was the most of anyone in the top 7. Ocon was the next best with 6 positions, and he was in P8. And obviously, Behrman gained 10 positions. So it was a decent race from Ferrari and particularly from Hamilton.
Yep, and like I said, that was kind of all created from that second stint where Lewis drove so well. On that note of driver of the day, who was your driver of the day?
It's not Hamilton, is it? Honestly, yeah, you have, because fine. I've done it to you before. I can't complain. Piastri's got to be up there. It was pretty much a flawless. I can't recall a single thing he did wrong. Unbelievable drive from Piastri. Honestly, I'm going to give it to George Russell though, purely because of all those issues he was nursing at the end, to hold off Lando Norris, who was clearly a lot faster at this point. I mean, Piastri gapped him by 15 seconds on the same tires. So that car was a lot quicker than what George Russell was able to do. He was having all these issues. They were telling him, oh, your dash might go off. Please do this with the screen. Please do that with the screen. Obviously, he had his transponder issues as well, having to manually do DRS, as a couple of other people were. That was a lot of stress and pressure there. We had Lando right all over him. I managed to defend him perfectly. For a P2, like that's a really good result. As you said, Mercedes do seem decent, but his teammate, okay, I know he's a rookie and whatever else, fine, but only finished P11, 48 seconds back, despite there being a mid-race safety car, while Russell was 15 seconds back. So what's that, 33 seconds between them. So because of his issues and overcoming the well, it's George Russell for me. Go on, who's yours?
I mean, I was hoping you weren't going to say George Russell. I'm not going to be boring and say the same thing as you, because
were you going to say George?
It was the same driver of the day, but I'm going to give an honourable mention to Ollie Behrman. I think double Haas points. Firstly, Haas absolutely smashed it. Shout out to Ocon, who I felt kind of went underappreciated as well with his race. Behrman made some great moves, rescued a point in the end. It was outside the points, I think, for a while in that race. Behrman drove absolutely fantastically, and not for the first time. Behrman he's really impressing. Last week, we were kind of, I think you were saying like Hadjar was your kind of like rookie of the season or recently, and I was on about Antonelli. And I think, to be honest, if Behrman keeps driving the way he is, he's gonna be my rookie of the season at some point, because he's been brilliant. He just doesn't. He just seems fearless. He just goes for a gap whenever it's there. And okay, he might make a mistake, but he just doesn't seem fazed by it. It's great. You love to see it. There's so much pressure in Formula One, and you see a lot of drivers, maybe like Lawson, that do struggle with that pressure. Behrman's just like, nah, mate, I'll send it. I don't care. Like,
yeah, I mean, to be fair, the Haas duo were the top two people that gained the most positions. Behrman gained 10, Ocon gained 6. Next best, as I said, was Hamilton gaining 4. So clearly the Haas have sorted their car out. Do you remember before they used to qualify well and just be nowhere in the race? They just would always go backwards, and they've been doing the exact opposite. So yeah, I agree. Fair play. Awesome race in both of those. Just want to mention about the rookie thing. So first of all, Behrman, kind of a rookie. I mean, he did a whole race for Ferrari, for God's sake, almost a year ago. And then another race for, I can't remember, was it Haas he deputised for at the end of the last season?
Yeah,
so, he's done a couple, but I know it's in a couple, fine. He's still new. He's still new, but he's not as rookie as someone like Hadjar, who is much newer just to F1 in general. He is a genuine rookie, so he has got two or three less races under his belt compared to him. And let's not forget, he's right now up against the guy that Red Bull thought was going to be I was going to call it their next star, their number 2 driver, let's be honest. And he's up against him and making him look, I mean, not good. It would be the nice way to say that. I mean, he finished P13 in the race, but Liam Lawson finished P16. So, I don't know. That was after Lawson's penalty, to be fair.
Yeah,
I think they were pretty close. I think Lawson did cross the line in front of him, to be fair to him. But I don't know. Hadjar has just impressed me because he's so new, whereas Behrman is like, and the same with like Antonelli. Like, Antonelli is hyped, right? So he is doing really well, but he's hyped. So you kind of expect it. Behrman, Ferrari chose him to deputise. Like, that's big. He's expecting to do well. Hadjar's gone under the radar a bit, and he's actually doing really well for a rookie.
I would say, I will agree with you that for Hadjar, I think the most impressive thing is you're in that Red Bull family, and if there's ever a time of turmoil in that Red Bull family, it's now. I mean, it's been a complete shambles. So to step in knowing that if you don't perform, you get axed that easily, then yeah, it is impressive for sure. And Behrman, as you rightly said, had that seat in Ferrari, I think, at Jeddah last year. But he did impress. He also had a lot of pressure on himself, and for me, I don't really see it as any difference from having 2 more races or whatever, but anyway, so I want to
wait. Just before we move on, the little tiny talking point. Have you noticed that Croftley says Hadjar? Yeah.
Yes.
It has. Is it starting annoying you?
I hate you for it. Ever since
sorry.
the first race at Australia. Every time, I even pointed it out to my girlfriend. I was like, listen to Crofty every time. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's weird.
Like, it's Badger. Really, it's so annoying. It is annoying. Sorry, carry on.
Anyway, I wanted to talk about your very controversial point earlier, which I'm sure a lot of listeners of yours will agree with, Mr. Lando Norris. Come on, talk us through your take on Lando Norris so far and also on the Bahrain Grand Prix.
I think my issue is I don't like people who are overhyped. And Lando Norris right now is overhyped. They're talking about, champion-elect almost before the season even started and being like, oh, Lando's going to be champion, yada, yada, yada. And I've said all along, I think Piastri is really decent now. Since the second half of last season, he's been right there with Lando all the way. And Lando has got a lot of hype, right? Because, he is a decent driver, that's clear. And, a lot of social media, so many fans and stuff. Everyone loves him. Oh, he's so good. Is he? At the moment? Is he? Because, that was a really poor weekend from him. He qualified only P6 in that car. Let's not forget his comments from a couple of years ago, putting Hamilton down for doing well in the best car. At least he could beat his teammate, buddy. And I really like Piastri. Piastri is a really good driver, but come on, only P6. That's a real big bottle. And look, he bottled it in China sprint qualifying as well. He almost bottled it in China main qualifying. He did just about get a lap at the end. Fair play to him, but he's not having a good season. He says he's struggling with the car and yada, yada. But hello, it's clearly the fastest car. This is exactly the sort of thing you were giving Hamilton stick before for. And then, let his car roll forward out of his grid spot. Come off it, mate. Are you okay? Do you know how much you earn? Why are you making these sort of mistakes? Oh,
I'm so glad I'm
I
so glad
really
you
wasn't
got in,
impressed. Honestly, just look at Piastri's weekend. Absolute dominated. No one ever showed a wheel because he was that good. And then meanwhile, you got Norris struggling through to a P3, which probably should have been a P2. You know, and like just racing Leclerc as well, a bit clumsy, and I'm just not impressed. Right? He's not champion material right now. That's the thing that we always said last year. Is he champion material? Can he beat Max? No, still not. Supposedly he was meant to be this year. He just isn't at the moment. He isn't good enough. He isn't consistent enough. I want to be clear. I think he's a fantastic driver. Of course he is. He drives a McLaren. He's one of the best drivers in F1 still. But you've got to be on. You've got to find another gear if you want to be world champion. Right now, Oscar Piastri is finding that gear. The only mistake Oscar Piastri has made all season was in Australia, and it was the same mistake that Norris made. He just got a bit less lucky with it. That's it. Other than that, Piastri has been rock solid this season. Piastri, my goat, world champion 2025.
I'm going to read my notes word for word.
Okay.
I wrote, "Does Lando Norris get too much scrutiny?"
He does right here, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely from you. Look, I think it's completely the other way. I obviously agree that he's making too much mistakes for a world champion. Clearly, no one can deny that. Especially when you compare to Max, who just barely puts a foot wrong. Also, Lewis in his Mercedes dominant years, again, barely put a foot wrong. So when you compare to former world champions, Lando is making far too many mistakes, clearly. But I mean, what was social media and people saying about Piastri at Australia when that happened? No one really said anything. No one gave him any hate. Lando is just always in the news. Lando has tons of fans. He's we touched on this in previous podcasts. He's great with social media and with everything he does. And I just think it just puts him more in the spotlight. So when things go wrong, or if he says something, it's just amplified on a whole other level. And we see that sometimes with Hamilton, with other drivers, with Max as well. If he says something that might be taken out of context potentially by journalists, I think with Lando, it's just completely on another level, amplified to Piastri, where he, in my view, he could make the same mistake and no one would really give him as much stick as what Lando gets. So for me, Lando is overhated, but he does deserve criticism for Bahrain because it quite frankly wasn't good enough, especially the start. As you said, there's no excuse for just like lining up properly and then just moving your car forwards and picking up a penalty for it. That was madness. So I actually thought after a very poor qualifying from Lando to bottle Q3, I thought he did all right in the race. I thought he recovered pretty much as well as he could. I did expect him to get P2 on Russell at the end, which obviously didn't happen. So I guess he'll be disappointed on that scale, but he was never going to beat his teammate with the position he put himself in qualifying. So I don't know. I just think he's overhated.
I don't really see any hate of Lando. I just see him being overhyped, but that's welcome to F1. You know what I mean? Like he's made himself hyped by how good he is on social media and stuff and having his personality and stuff, which is great. But obviously when you draw more attention to yourself in that way and make yourself hyped, you're going to be scrutinized more as well. But I don't feel like he's over scrutinized though. I feel like if anything, people are overly kind to him when he does have poor weekends. But it is interesting though, isn't it, the difference between him and Piastri? Piastri is just very calm, quietly goes about his business and just, doobie-doos and picks up wins and stuff. At the moment he is, at least. Yeah. And whereas Norris is all about personality and, all these other things and is scrutinized more because of it. But they're just really different, but end up being really close on track. So I don't know. I as I said, I'm a bigger fan of Piastri personally, but I think it is because he's barely got any hype around him, while Norris has got loads of hype around him. But hey, it probably means he was able to negotiate an extra couple million a year just purely because of the amount of hype he's got. So I don't feel too sorry for him.
Oh yeah, look, I think I would agree that Lando was overhyped before. When was it? I guess around this time last year before they got their strong car around Miami time. So around that time, Lando and McLaren were not the fastest car and they weren't expecting to win races, and therefore people's expectations were much lower, and he was a bit of a media darling. Everyone loved him, laughing and joking around, and that was that. Whereas now it feels like everything he says is criticized. I go on Twitter, whether it's him talking about his car or whether it's his own results or whatever, whether he's honest or not, people just seem to hate on him for every small reason. So I do feel for him a little bit, but on the other side, I admire the way Piastri acts because, as you said, he does just kind of seem to just get his head down, not care too much about anything else around, and just drive. And he does a really good job. So I'll be interested to see, Alex, if in the coming weeks and races, if Piastri makes similar mistakes, if he's going to get the similar reception, because I felt like he won't. I felt like it's going to be.
Well, as I said, though, it is because he's overhyped. You're right. No one expects Piastri to be. Like, who was calling Piastri world champion at the start of the season? Like, no one. It was all about Lando. Is it going to be, are Red Bull going to have a good enough car to allow Max to fight? Barely anyone was talking about Piastri being champion. So he hasn't got that hype around him. So he hasn't got the scrutiny that comes with it. So I don't know. It's because don't forget, second half of last season, Max Verstappen outscored Lando Norris, despite it being pretty clear that McLaren had the better car. So even last season, it was all like, oh, he's going to be the one that brings the fight to Max, and just couldn't do it.
But then he also outscored Piastri, and then Lando outscored Piastri. So I mean, I get it. Realistically, at the start of the season, like when we did our kind of predictions, I actually had Piastri, I think, third behind Max and Lando, because I thought he's not going to be as consistent based on his track record. So I feel like it's fair enough to assume that if McLaren have a dominant car that no one else can touch, that Lando's going to be potential world champion. I feel like that's okay to make that assumption. But I mean, hey, I guess it's always good to disagree on these things.
Speaking of overhyped, now I want to now, not in the past. Now, Fernando Alonso.
You love this. I swear you're just doing that to me.
Yeah. What did he say this week? The best he's ever driven? Like his number one best race of all time, was it this week? Barely beating Lance Stroll? Like, no, he didn't. But that's basically what we said last week when it was pretty bang average as well. Where did he finish? P15. A whole minute off the lead. I know that car's bad. He beat Lance Stroll by 5 seconds. I know it was a late safety car, but come on. That's it. That's all I've got to say. What did you think about Aston Martin's performance?
Monster drive, 2 Titan drivers within 5 seconds of each other, pushing each other. Fantastic.
Good.
I mean, look, we can't really. It's just hard to judge because, like, I think your comments last week about Fernando being mid, which is, quite extreme.
These days, he used to be one of the best drivers in F1, if not the best. But now, I just think he's a bit washed.
For sure, I think you had a very valid point when you were on about Adrian Newey cooking a 26 car, and maybe he's kind of hanging about for that in your words. Which fine, maybe there's an element of truth behind that, but just look at the car. Like, we know what type of track Bahrain is. There's a reason why we do testing at Bahrain. It's a very good measure of car performance, and the Aston is not a good car. So honestly, you could put Max, Lando, whoever you want in that Aston. They were not scoring points at Bahrain. I don't want to hear it. No, nobody's scoring points.
But I agree, that car is terrible at the moment. But speaking of like perceived performance, I find it really interesting going back to Lando that it's very much relative to his teammate. So he'll be saying like, oh, yeah, just not getting on with the car. Like, the car just really struggling right now, yada, yada. It's only because Oscar's just ahead of him. If Oscar wasn't ahead of him, he would not be saying these things. He just, and don't get me wrong, that's kind of, that's your only real comparison. And obviously not be happy, but he almost blames the car when Oscar's ahead a lot of the time. But when he's ahead, it's like just like, oh yeah, it was all right, no mention of any issues with the car. And then suddenly Oscar's beating him, oh no, we've got some issues with the car now. So make up your mind. I'm moving on. I'm over it.
Yeah, I will just add on that as well, that I liked that. I think it was after the race, Piastri acknowledged that they had the fastest car, which is quite refreshing to hear, given all the like back and forth with like Lando being, constantly downplaying the car, which is not the only person to do that.
To be fair, I do think Lando said after the race, like in this car, I probably should have been getting P2, but like not the best weekend for me, sort of thing. So he did say that after. I think he said something to that effect, because he obviously see what Oscar's done to it, and he could see that clearly he was quicker than the cars in front. I mean, he was 2 seconds back from Russell when he overtook Leclerc and Cole within like 2 laps. So like they definitely got a decent car advantage at the moment. So yeah, to some extent they are finally acknowledging it now. But that's not to say things are perfect, right? Like, no one's got the perfect race car. Just because you've got the fastest car, it doesn't mean you're not struggling with it. I completely accept that. It's just more that he only says those things when Oscar out qualifies him, and that's again just rubs me the wrong way. It's because he's overhyped, but I'm over it. I've vented now.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered the McLaren drivers situation nicely there. I want to move on and talk about the TV production and timings. I saw so many tweets and people yelling on social media about how awful it was at Bahrain. We were missing overtakes. We missed Verstappen on Gasly at the end. We missed Hamilton, I think, at the start of the race, moving positions and then getting like squeezed off. And there were just key moments that were missed. There was one other as well that I can't quite remember now, but it was a key overtake happening, and they were focusing on one of the gaps, I think, at the time. And there were multiple moments where I was almost like nearly shouting at my TV, like, what is going on? It was a disaster class. And please correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember another race where they've shown the race winner as a small little video in the top left, but the main feed is focused on a different battle. I'm not saying I don't like that, because I actually always used to complain that we would watch someone drive across the line 20 seconds in the lead while there's a fight going on. But I just found that interesting. I don't know whether they've just changed that or whether that's a change for this season, but I don't know. Have you anything to add on that?
There's quite a few bits there. So we'll move on to the kind of timing issues in a minute, because I've done a lot of research into this and there's some interesting points there. But we're little teaser for you. We'll just we'll stick with the TV direction initially, because I agree. I don't recall a time either that they've shown the picture-in-picture of the leader crossing the line. I didn't mind it. What I would like to see is just the 5 seconds as he's crossing the line show that, especially as it was clear what we were watching, nothing was going to happen. There was no more overtaking positions left.
Yeah.
Norris wasn't that close to Russell. That was done at that point. They should have accepted that and then shown at least him actually cross the line 5 seconds after, then flip back to them. So they could have managed that slightly better, to be fair. And yeah, it was frustrating, because what it seemed to be, despite the fact that down into turn 4 was a great overtaking opportunity, especially if you've lined up through turn 1, 2, is what they would seem to do is show a bit of battle in turn 1, 2 that didn't result in an overtake, but you could see that they were lining up, like they had a much better line and the car behind was lining up an overtake down in turn 4. You could see that from turn 1, and then they would then flip to someone else behind them that was trying to overtake into turn 1 as well. And it's like, I think maybe one of Hamilton's moves was shown similarly. Yeah. And it's like, they're probably side by side right now. Like, why are we not seeing that? It was a little bit frustrating, to be fair. So yeah, you are right. But what I will say is, if the similar sort of people who are doing that are the people that were linked to the timing stuff, I give them a bit of slack on that, because there was some massive timing issues, wasn't there? We've actually had timing issues in 4 out of the 5 races so far. It was a bit different in Bahrain, but they've all had some sort of issue where the gaps just stop updating. I mean, the data that I get just completely stops publishing. So like, it'll be working fine and just suddenly it just stops. There's no gap updates, there's no position updates, there's no lap times, no sectors, nothing. It completely dies. It seems to be they have to reset it, because it seems to take 2, 3, 4, 5 laps. They reset it and then it's fine again. So that's why we keep getting that. It's been happening since round 1, and they keep having to hide the timing tower because it's the information's wrong or it's not updating, whatever. So yes, it is a bit annoying that. That's an issue that seems to be ongoing. But actually, the bigger issue we saw regarding timing in the Bahrain Grand Prix was caused by George Russell's car. So we saw some DRS stuff. So basically what happened is the transponder in George Russell's car died. It stopped reporting live positions. I covered this quite well in my main channel video that I've just put out. But basically, F1 cars have got a transponder in line with the front axle. And every 150 to 200 meters, they drill a 10 mil hole in the track, like a line, and then run a timing loop through it. You see these, like in the UK, you'll see them like leading up to traffic lights and stuff. The same thing where you see like the 2 lines. They have something really similar. And basically every time a car crosses one of those, the timing loop picks up the unique identifier that the car sends. It combines it with a GPS time and then sends that to a central system, which works out things like gaps, positions, DRS, crucially, is the point. Starting as well, jump starts, things like that. Use the system for quite a lot of things. By the way, it's also accurate to 1/10,000th of a second. That's 4 decimal places, 1 more decimal place than we get to see publicly. So it's ridiculously accurate. But yeah, so basically what happened was George Russell's transponder died, so the system couldn't detect him going around the track, which what caused him to drop down the timing screen. Looked like he'd retired, because obviously it's just not picking him up, so it assumes he stopped between the timing points. And also, obviously stopped his gaps updating, and also stopped anyone being able to detect when they were within 1 second of him for DRS. So F1 were actually quite smart with their solution, to be fair. So first of all, obviously on the timing tower, they went, okay, we can't have every lap because it seemed to reset itself. Whenever George Russell crossed the start-finish line, he seemed to reset up to P2. So obviously they can't have him dropping down every single lap. That just looks terrible. So they hid it for a bit. They then changed the system to work only across the start-finish line, which is a really smart solution because that's when Russell's was actually working. So just change it to work start-finish line only. So we only had gaps updated every 90 seconds or so. But actually, that's fine. Like, okay, we'd rather have it more often, obviously. But as a backup solution, that was fine. We still had the gaps there. They weren't updated as often as we like, but they were still there. We could see the gaps to everyone. The positions were right. Happy days. And we still had the timing tower. So that worked quite nicely, to be fair to them. I feel like they may have been a manual solution, interestingly, because I don't know if you noticed, even towards the end of the race, he would sometimes drop from second down to like third, fourth, and then back up to second. He would never drop all the way, but he'd drop a position or two and then go back up. There is so there's two backup systems. Sorry, I personally have found this fascinating. I'm going to keep going. I'm nearly there though. There's two backup systems. So if that timing loop system fails, there's one where it's got an infrared beam of light that runs along the start-finish line, which just does similar to the timing loop system, except for it doesn't know which car just passed. So it's just a car's just passed, and it's 10,000 per second accurate, really accurate, but a car's just passed. Someone then has to manually tell it which car just passed. So I think what they were doing on George Russell's car was using that infrared system for the timing as he crossed start finish line, and then manually telling the system that was George Russell. That was George Russell, which is why we sometimes saw him drop down, because maybe there was a 1 or 2 second delay till they told it, and then they told it was George Russell, then it went, oh yeah, and then put him back up to P2. So quite a clever backup solution that I think they were using. And they've also got a camera, which is basically a photo finish camera. If all that fails for some reason, they will get a photo of whoever crossed the line to make sure they get the positions right. That's obviously a simple backup solution, but very manual. So yeah, that's basically all the systems. But what essentially what happened was George Russell's transponder dies. No one knew whether they were in within 1 second. So they had to manually override their cars to allow them to enable DRS at any point. And by the way, I do mean at any point, not even just the DRS zones. Because we saw, I don't know if you've seen this, George, we saw Charles Leclerc open his DRS, not even in a DRS zone. It was completely on its own. So very illegal. Wasn't investigated, by the way, unlike George Russell's. It was very brief, open and shut. It did nothing. It gained nothing. Doesn't matter. But it happened, and it was illegal, and it wasn't investigated. Bit strange. And I don't know if you heard the Ferrari team radio on this one as well. It's hilarious. It was such a Ferrari moment. So they tell him. In fact, let me get the exact message up. So they come over the radio to Leclerc and say, "Driver default Charlie 74 on." Right? That's how you turn manual DRS in Ferrari, if you wanted to know.
Yeah.
That was all they told him. They didn't tell him this is going to turn on your DRS all the time and don't use it. Yada yada yada. They just give him that. So of course then he opens DRS. He's like, wait, what? And then he has to come back on the radio and says, what the hell have you done? Why do I have DRS on all the time now? They didn't tell him what they were doing, which is insane. So and then they said, do not use it. There's an issue with transponders, so only use it when I tell you. Like, okay, now we get it, but like as if they didn't tell him. They manually enabled his DRS, didn't tell him. That's hilarious. And then, but then interestingly. Yeah,
I want to interrupt you. Sorry, on the transponder. Do you know why it stopped working? That was the one thing I was trying to wonder. Like, how does it just stop working on Russell's car?
I think don't Mercedes do like a Wednesday debrief? We'll probably find that out soon. But he was having loads of electrical issues. Wasn't he? Do you remember they were saying on the radio your dash might go dark and things like that? Like he was clearly having some electrical issues, and that was just part of it. I think that's all it is really. They have got a second transponder though. I don't know if maybe that was working across the start finish line or something, or just is electronics failure was enough that even that wasn't working. I'm not too sure, but Anyway, one final point on Norris. So Norris, once they passed Leclerc and it became an issue, they then also got Norris to enable manual mode on his car, but they did it the opposite way around. So they told Lando what he was doing first, but also then didn't tell him how to do it. So they came over to the radio and said, I think we heard this on the broadcast actually, but they said, Lando, Russell has a problem with his GPS, which means the DRS gaps might be incorrect. Whenever you are under 1 second, which is hard to know, use DRS. Do not use it otherwise. And then he had to come back over and said, well, I can't because it's not in manual. So literally the exact opposite of Ferrari.
Oh my God, yeah.
And then they said, we've got a default for you. Go purple, default 05, but only use it when 100% sure. But I want to be clear, it is guesswork. They because there was no transponder, we had no timing information from George Russell's car. He had to guess when he was within 1 second. And if he got it wrong, he would have got a penalty. They would have reviewed it afterwards. They would have used the video feed and timed it and gone, well, you're 1.2 seconds away and you opened DRS. That's not allowed. Because the rules don't say you can use DRS when we tell you to. The rules say you can use DRS when you're within 1 second. The fact that the system failed is irrelevant to the rules. So he would have got a penalty if he used it too early. But that's why they said, look, it's hard to judge, but only use it when you're 100% sure you're within a second, because it was just guesswork, which is a bit mad. One final point. I know it's a monologue at the moment. One final point. I believe Lando Norris also illegally used his DRS very briefly. So he didn't use outside of any unpermitted zones. He didn't use it too early. You know, he did it all right, except I think he was opening it very slightly early than he should have done. So again, the transponder's across the front axle. So as soon as the front axle goes across the DRS line, they'll get a beep in their ear normally and they'll open DRS. So it's impossible to open it before that. Obviously now with his manual system, it's possible to open it early. So he was obviously just looking at the board, looking at the line and just trying to judge and pressing it. But according to onboard, because there's a light that lights up on his steering wheel, that light was coming on before he'd crossed the line. I'm talking less than a tenth of a second before. It's nothing at all. There was no real advantage there. But again, just like happened to Russell, just like should have happened to Leclerc, rules are rules. You're only supposed to open those zones. He did technically at least press the button early. I don't know, maybe the DRS actually takes half a second to open, in which case not a problem. But technically very slightly early. But in general, it doesn't matter, because then sometimes he was opening it late, and on average, he wasn't opening it early. And fundamentally, he didn't get past Russell anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But technically, he was pressing that button very slightly early, which is, again, technically against the rules. So all three of them broke the rules.
Are you saying that was not picked up? That wasn't noted?
That wasn't noted, but it was, honestly, it's almost like analyze it frame by frame. You're talking about like 1, maybe 2 frames early before he crossed the line. So, like, it is very marginal. But, you know, F1's, you know, we talk about people getting disqualified and stuff by half a millimeter and stuff. F1 is a small margin sport, and okay, there's some mitigating circumstances there, but that doesn't mean you can cheat. It's a harsh word, but what he did was outside the rules, just like it was for Leclerc, just like it was for Russell.
Yeah,
but it was nothing that didn't matter.
I understand your point. I think for me, it's I hate those situations where we should apply common sense and it's not applied because of some tiny infraction that ultimately didn't determine the outcome, right? And I'm glad in this scenario that none of that happened. Like even with the Russell one, because that was a little bit more extreme in the sense that he backed off and I think lost nearly 3/10 through a corner. I think it was. He basically just gave up nearly 3/10 to make sure that he didn't gain any advantage from opening DRS slightly too early. I think it was like 1 second too early. You might have already said that and gained like a tiny amount of time.
It wasn't early because he shouldn't have had DRS, but he had it open for 34 meters. So I think he gained like 0.02 or something. He gained basically nothing. So he was definitely disadvantaged. Yeah, but I just don't understand why he was investigated and Leclerc did exactly the same thing and wasn't. That was weird.
And I mean, Leclerc was literally, I'm pretty sure I remember which corner it was on. It was sector 3, pretty much right at the start of sector 3, going to the right-handers uphill. Yeah. I think that's where it opened. And I mean, maybe it should have been investigated. A bit weird why it wasn't, but like, please don't be penalising for that. It's ridiculous. Nobody's opened. I mean, flashbacks to do in Turn 1 Japan. Nobody's opened DRS through a corner for any advantage. So. Yeah, that was.
I do agree. I'm kind of glad they didn't investigate, because imagine if they did investigate, they see that Leclerc didn't back off like Russell did. Oh, that's a penalty, because it's not. It shouldn't be. And the same with Norris. It shouldn't be. With Norris, I'm very glad they didn't investigate it actually, because if he didn't give up the time, and if they did decide that yes, he has opened that a little bit too early, even if by a meter it's still too early, they may have been almost forced to punish him, because. That, you know, although the mitigating circumstance was that Russell's transponder wasn't working, that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you can just open it 100 meters too early. You know what I mean? Early's early. So I'm actually kind of glad he didn't pick up on that and investigate, because he may have actually got a penalty for that one, which would have been insane.
And look, I mean, we're on the topic of common sense and FIA. I want to bring up as well the, in my opinion, lack of common sense around the penalty for Liam Lawson on Jack Doohan on the Alpine. I don't know if you saw it, but it was turn 1. I forget which lap. But basically, Lawson went down the inside And we see in a lot of moves, of course, when drivers are attacked by another, they'll sometimes just run wide or allow more space because obviously they're thinking risk management. They're not wanting to take any risk, damage their car for the sake of maybe losing or gaining one position. Jack Doohan didn't really do anything other than just kind of he left a little bit of space on the inside. Lawson came in a bit too hot and made contact. I don't know if it was wheel to wheel. I believe it was, but the contact was so minor that no car got any damage at all. Jack Doohan wasn't shunted wide. Lawson wasn't. There was nothing really that happened. It was just basically a contact from Lawson's move. Fair enough. By the law, a penalty for causing a collision, fine, I get it. But what I don't like about racing standards at the moment is that Sainz on Hamilton at the start of the race, lap 1, completely ran him off the track when he was ahead of the exit of turn 2. Could have left him space, but just completely squeezed him off into the gravel, ensured that he held the position. If Hamilton just thinks, no, I'm not going to move, I'm going to stay here, then they have a collision, and what? Sainz gets a penalty? But because Hamilton drives off the track to avoid him, nothing. Lando Norris on Leclerc, you criticised the move earlier. I actually thought what Lando did around the outside of Leclerc, the first attempt, was a good effort, and Leclerc defended it really well. Leclerc, by the way, is, in my opinion, one of the best wheel-to-wheel racers on the grid. He's fantastic in those situations. But ultimately, Leclerc ran him off the track. The only reason Lando didn't get the move done is because Leclerc literally shoved him off the track and gave no room. And I just don't like that. Again, I'll say it again. If Lando had stayed there and forced a collision because Leclerc's, squeezing him, then what? Is Leclerc going to get a penalty because Leclerc is... is one of them going to get a penalty because of causing a collision? I just don't like the ambiguity around it, purely based on the fact that you have to cause a collision for us to take any action. I don't know. I'm interested to hear your take because I know we think quite differently on this stuff.
I think I do agree. I just want to be clear because I don't even recall this. It was that minor. I literally don't recall it. Was it Lawson overtaking Doohan?
Yes, it was turn 1, going down the inside, 5-second penalty.
Because obviously that is, as the overtaking car, it is your responsibility to avoid contact, essentially. So in the case of where Norris tried to go on the outside of Leclerc, yes, Leclerc did squeeze him off, but rightfully so, based on the rules that we've got, which is if you're going to overtake on the outside, you have to be at least level at the apex. And he wasn't. He was just behind at the apex. He did actually end up level or even potentially slightly ahead after that. But as the rules are they what they are, I don't necessarily agree with them because I wouldn't like to see him shoved off in that situation. But he just shoved off because that was his right within the rules. But I think if there was a collision, again, it's Leclerc defending. I don't think he did anything wrong by the rules. I think that's okay. But yeah, I do agree with you though that I can give this guy a penalty if I just make sure I squeeze him and then he taps into me. You know what I mean? Like it does seem a little bit silly. It's a hard one to resolve, to be fair. It does seem harsh though that Lawson got a penalty for that, especially when we had Tsunoda absolutely murdering Sainz, which didn't do anything wrong. But, there was big contact there, and that really... Sainz retired from it eventually. Like, that had massive consequences on Sainz. And I always feel like, because he, almost lost the car, it's like, oh, okay, we'll let him off then. Well, no, because you're the one trying to accelerate that hard that you're getting wheel spin that's making you lose the car. I've never understood that argument. Oh, yeah, but I had oversteer. Okay, it's your responsibility to control your car. If you're failing to control your car, that's still a you issue. So, yeah... I do agree. It does sound very harsh what they did to Lawson. I feel like the other calls were largely right. I think on Norris and Leclerc in particular, they were right. I did notice Hamilton getting shoved off at the start, which I don't think was covered that well by replays.
No.
I could be wrong. But yeah, I did notice that Hamilton was pretty much ahead of Sainz. And I think he lost like 2.
Yeah, that one on Hamilton. Exactly. I think he jumped 2 off the start. We weren't on board with that one because we were rightfully at the time watching another battle elsewhere, but we didn't get a replay of it until well into the race. And then we saw that Sainz he'd lost those positions back because Sainz had just chopped him off into the gravel. So again, I didn't phrase it very well. I mean, the penalty on Lawson was completely justified. No complaints about that whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
I don't like the fact that we then have another situation where drivers can just yeet each other off the track, and as long as there's no collision, no worries, happy days. But then I see other ones where they do. I've seen other races because obviously they're different stewards each weekend, which is another issue in itself. I have definitely seen other races where penalties have been given out for forcing off the track. So it's I just don't like it. I don't know whether it's a case where we can put something in place where it's like a certain, like it has to be front wheel to rear wheel or something, and if that's the case, then you have to leave space. If you don't, you're going to get penalized. I agree, it's a really tough one to resolve, but I wish we would do more, because it just bugs me so much. Like I feel like it detracts from some of the overtaking efforts sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes it
is difficult in certain corners, because Bahrain turn 1, the reason we get so many overtakes there is because the optimal line is to go slower than you otherwise could in turn 1 to set up your exit for turn 2. So that's why we see quite a few dive bombs there, because you actually can brake like 10 meters later almost and get it stopped still, but you just have a terrible line for turn 2. So that one is kind of tricky, because you go for this move and you think, oh, great move if they pull it off, but if they don't quite pull it off and they don't fully commit because Lawson's low on confidence, then there ends up being a collision. I'm not saying that shouldn't be a penalty, but I think it's partly caused by that sequence of corners. And I only just realized this weekend that it's that sequence of corners, those sort of things, when we see such good battling, it's because you can brake so much later. Whereas with a normal corner, take away turn 2, let's pretend it's just straight from turn 1 to turn 4, whatever it is, we wouldn't see these kind of moves, because you can't brake 10 meters later and get it stopped. It's not happening unless the optimal line is to actually not brake as late as you possibly can. So and then I also noticed there was an issue. I can't remember who it was. Someone went for a real audacious move. Was it? I think it might have been Leclerc or Russell, possibly. Someone went for a ridiculous move. Huge dive bomb, barely got it stopped, and the other guy just switched back and see you later. It was an easy switch back because he went so deep. But like, ridiculous dive bomb. I thought F1 Esports, that's a penalty. Well, I thought, what the hell? I know we're a bit off topic there, but as if that would be a penalty in F1 Esports, and that's the sort of move we want to see. I don't think you should punish dive bombs, but that's separate. Anyway.
The classic Thomas Ronhar 1 second rough driving kind of penalty.
It reminded me of Fassi and Burmond.
Netherlands.
Zandvoort, exactly, yeah. It was more like that, like such a big dive bomb that there's actually no issue with it because it was so outrageous.
I thought it's the one you're thinking of. Was it not Lando and Charles, when Lando was trying to get past on the first attempt and completely just locked up and kind of went straight on?
No, because this person went at the inside. I don't remember who it was. It was one of the frontish people. I can't really remember, but they just went for a big move and just up the inside and just outbraked themselves, and they just came through. I feel like it was Russell, but I could be wrong. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Anyway, moving on. I feel like we've covered that quite nicely. For our off-topic segment today, I wanted to talk about Creator Series. And now, Alex, I know you've been away doing, touching grass and doing all those busy things you like to do on a weekend.
There's not much grass in London, mate, but yeah, I've been trying.
Well, yeah. So you weren't there at Creator Series, so I'll kind of give a brief summary of what happened. That we had a wild card for race number 1. It was a double header, so 2 50% races away from the normal 100% race format. And race number 1, we had a wild card of you're only allowed to box once you get a puncture. So you just have to stay out on those tires. Once you get a puncture, you box, and then it's then it's game on. In the background, since this, in private, we've had multiple drivers and also viewers at the time as well agreeing that we probably shouldn't do this again, purely because we didn't realize if you get 2 punctures, you just cannot drive. Both Toms got disqualified because they got 2 punctures. Really unluckily, it's just pure RNG. They both got punctures on, I think, both left side tires, and it just meant that they just could not drive at all into the gravel. That's it, disqualified. So clearly, that's not what we want. That's a slightly separate point, because then we went on to race 2, where it was then a normal race, so no wild cards, reverse grid from the results of that first one. Now, we had an absolute banger of a race. Half the grid would disagree because the gaps elsewhere, but literally 9 drivers, I looked at it, 9 drivers were in a titanic battle for a podium, top 5, whatever you want to call it. I think the only position that wasn't up for grabs was Tom 97 was going to win the race with the gap he had. But otherwise, it was going to be an almighty scrap between effectively 8 cars. And we had a rigged intentional safety car on lap 25 of 29, I think. So yeah, we had 2 racing laps to go, and it just completely ruined the strategy and offset of tires that was going to happen right at the end. And needless to say, it completely ruined the race. I saw a lot of viewers' comments, a lot of people unhappy with the way it the way it unfolded. I know you're sat there right now loving life because I know you've been preaching for the rooftops for a while now. Get intentional safety cars gone. I think, I've been on the fence for this for a while. I said to you before that I like the fact that we can get safety cars to bunch the grid up and to keep things close and give other creators a chance that might not already. But I don't think that should happen right at the end of a race and make it a 5-lap race, right? We don't want to see that. That's obviously not what I think. So it's a really tough one. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, are you still on that side of just get all intentional safety cars gone? Or would you kind of welcome a change to say, well, from the halfway point of the race or with 15 laps to go or whatever it is, like you're no longer allowed to cause intentional safety cars? Or what is your view on that?
Yeah, I still don't like intentional safety cars. I think the problem is they're too open to abuse. Although there's now technically a rule that you can't do a safety car for someone in particular, they're still open to abuse. We've got smaller creators there who might feel influenced by bigger creators, and who might do things to that they've requested or whatever. Or you might not like the guy who's about to win the race, so you're going to cause one to stop him winning it. There's just lots of issues there that are really hard to get out. And honestly, I don't know why we're encouraging people to DNF. If we're encouraging people to start the race, why are we encouraging people not to finish the race? I've never understood that. We've got people in Creator Series who barely finish a race. I won't call them by name, but there's 2 people in Creator Series who literally almost never finish a race. Like, their DNF rate is like, I don't know what it is, like 75, 80%. Ridiculous. And I just think, look, obviously they've got their reasons, but from my point of view personally, what's the point? Like, it's not all about finishing, but you're there to race. Sometimes they do it after only like a quarter of the race distance. Yeah. I'm like, why have you bothered turning up? Give that seat to someone who actually wants to race, who actually wants to do the whole race distance. I've never liked it. So I am in support of getting rid of purposeful safety cars. But what intrigues me this week is, again, I haven't seen the race. I genuinely don't know what happened, barring what's been said in the Creator Series Discord. I just don't really, for me, I don't understand what's different this week. I don't know if you're able to explain, Jimmy, because we get this, Creator Series from my end is known as just always been a 5-lap sprint. You do, I know it was 250% this week, but normally you do a 100% distance race. You do 95% of it. You then get a 5% sprint to the finish. It makes the whole rest of it basically pointless. And I've always hated it. It's really common. I don't really understand why this week in particular, everyone's going, oh, wasn't that rubbish? Well, what was different this week?
Well, in a nutshell, nothing's different. And maybe it's no surprise that we've created our own podcast, because clearly I'm pretty sure I was the one that raised it afterwards, that I was unhappy that this whole thing was ruined. I think it might have been Italian content creator Lolinoba that raised it. Either way, we were both speaking around the same time about the agreeing with the same thing. And ultimately, you need a voice to kind of raise this and to pick it out as an issue, because for me in Japan, I was nowhere, my pace was nowhere, and I just was not in the fight for the lead. So for me, I didn't, I'm not saying, oh, I'm only talking about this because it affected me. I just mean that I just didn't really notice it as much as anyone else, because for me, I was focused on my own race, which was just trundling around in kind of P7, 6 around there. So for me in Japan, because obviously, as you said, it happened before, not the first time, not even close, but that's why I didn't raise it before. And I would say that if I was one of the front runners in that race and I'd been shafted by it, I would be raising it then. So that's kind of why I've brought that up at Bahrain. And also as well, the fact that we've now had a lot of races like this. So I don't know if you remember when this was, I want to say it was start of season 8, maybe, that intentional safety cars were allowed, or was it just this season? Do you remember?
It's been a couple of seasons, hasn't it? It's not just this season.
Yeah.
Must be season 8.
Yeah. Let's go with season 8 then. A couple seasons, I feel like F1 25 is around the corner. For me, this is my last race weekend, and the Creator Series only has 2 more. So I feel like we're at just a good concluding point of the game and to take the series forwards. And that's why I feel like it's quite a good time to raise this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, it's not always well received. Some drivers don't like to have these debates and just think that everything's drama, and fine, whatever. I don't mind kind of catching a bit of stick saying that I'm constantly raising these kind of points. I like to have these discussions because I want to better the series and have good races, the same as everyone else. But yeah, that's the reason why, to answer your question in long form, that's the reason why it's raised this week, is because quite simply the people that were affected raised it. So
yeah, I think the bit I didn't understand was because it's been raised lots. Like I raise it pretty much every week. Like raising it isn't really the issue. It's that most people just don't comment on it for the most part, and the people that do tend to be for purposeful safety cars, which I personally don't understand, but that's fine. That's just a difference of opinion. But yeah, I just most people seem to be complaining about it this week, which they don't normally do. So I didn't, but maybe it was like you said, maybe it was as simple as you had 8 people in the fight for P2 by the sounds of it, and those people would have preferred there not to be a safety car, whereas normally there's only a couple people in the fight for a podium, so there's more people that are benefiting from it, so they're going to keep quiet, which is it's a bit of a shame, honestly. Just if you're only just looking after your own race, I get it. Like in Japan, you're not going to raise it because it helped you. I do get that, but like hopefully people have a bit more integrity and be able to be like, okay, I know it benefited this week, but maybe I'd rather it wasn't there permanently.
Again, just to highlight, like the reason I didn't highlight in Japan wasn't because it benefited me. It was just that I just simply was like, oh, safety car, for what it just happened. And like, you had the Brendan Lee thing. There were so many other focal points that just detracted away from that. Whereas Bahrain in that race, literally the only big talking point was it was going to be a mega race, a really cool, like different dynamic of strategy. And the whole thing was ruined. And
wait, was it strategy? I thought it was just cars that were close. Was it a strategy thing? Was it?
Sorry. Yeah. I didn't explain that well. Yeah. So it was, 4 drivers on practically fresh soft tires, 5 drivers, I think, that were lapping. I looked at Tom 97's lap on 24. On the lead train, he gained 3.8 seconds. And at the timing of the safety car, he was 3 seconds behind the train. So
wow.
I was only, there was Tom Biener, Dutch Tom. He was behind Tom 97, not confusing at all. By about like 1 second, and then I was a further like 2.5, 3 seconds behind Tom. You don't need to be a mathematician with 4 laps to go to see that clearly the podium was going to be Tom, and me, probably. Obviously, we don't know because there would have been a lot of fighting in the train despite the massive grip difference. We'll never know, but what we do know is it would have been a mega monstrous finish, and it was completely snatched away. And I've only picked out 3 drivers there. There were 2 more behind me that would have been involved in that. So
I think you've just hit the nail on the head. And for me, that's the issue, is because I like strategy. I find it really interesting, especially when you've got tire offsets and you've got people catching. We had similar at Japan last weekend. I was winning by 9 seconds or so, but Lolly was catching me by about a second a lap, and there was about 9 laps to go. It was a similar sort of situation, except for that was going to be literally like coming down to the last lap. I was like really pushing, like if I can find 2/10 a lap, then they won't catch me, but it's gonna be difficult. My tires are gonna die. Really interesting. And I guess the number one issue for me is that purple safety cars tend to get rid of that because there's a lot of them. But also, the person causing the purposeful safety car can't see that nuance. They don't know what's going on in the race. They're just doing their own race. They can look at the mini map and stuff, and they can see that people have, maybe people are spread out, but they don't know that's actually, we're having a titanic battle. We might be 9 seconds apart, but we're actually having a titanic battle. We're both pushing our asses off to try and win this race, but we're 9 seconds apart. And then maybe the person causing the safety car just says, oh, well, that's boring. He's going to win easy. I'll put it in the wall then. And it's like, well, no, you've just missed all that. I think, to me, maybe a solution would be a middle ground option, whereby purposeful safety cars are only allowed when the race directors say they're allowed. So a situation like Bahrain, it sounds like we had also in Japan, we don't need it. We're going to have a fight for the lead. It's going to be exciting. No, thank you. But there may be some races where all the cars separate by 5 seconds. No one's catch each other. It is kind of boring. So then maybe go and voice chat and be like, okay, guys, do what you want, but we are now going to allow purposeful safety cars. And that's it. It's just basically a mid-race rule change. You don't tell someone. You don't say, hi, you're having a bad race. Can you cause a safety car? Because that's not fair on them. But you just come in and just say, look, almost like DRS enabled, purposeful safety cars enabled, and that's it. That can be a good middle ground solution, because I know people are concerned about there being big gaps and all this stuff. But it's just such a shame that especially in 100% distance race, that is all about strategy. It's really interesting, and we just don't get that in Creator Series, and it kind of sucks. What do you think about that?
What I don't like about that suggestion, firstly, nice that we're trying to find a compromise, but what I don't like is that in that scenario, drivers have access to the VC. So viewers themselves would literally hear someone come in saying, oh, you can cause a safety car now, and then maybe there's a decent chance, and someone then just stacks it in the wall, and viewers might just think, well, we're going to get a safety car, we know what's happening. So I don't think that could work. I just don't see I don't see how that could work. That would be too gimmicky, which is ironic given the current situation, which I do think is way too gimmicky, having 5 laps left or no laps left at the end of the race. But I don't think that could work. I feel like, if anything, a cutoff point in the race would be potentially just the best scenario. I think, to be honest, I was always on the fence from the beginning because I agreed with your angle and views on why it shouldn't be allowed. But I also still think that I want to have every creator have the best chance of being in the race as possible. And unfortunately, if you are a bit off the pace, then you don't have a very good chance. So, we're there for content as well as the race. So it's slightly different to a traditional league race. So that's why I always thought that way. But I think at this point now, going into 25 with a fresh season, fresh start almost, I feel like I probably would support the view to just bin them off. I think I would just remove them completely. I would welcome if it was a mid-race or 15 laps to go or whatever compromise. But otherwise, I would probably just say get rid of them.
I do agree. Like, my vote, regardless of any potential compromises, my personal vote would be to just get rid of them. But I would also accept a compromise similar. Yeah, I don't know. It is a very difficult one. I think I don't agree with the whole, but people need to make content, so let them be closer. The only people it benefits are people that have bottled their race. May not be their fault, they bottled, whatever, but something's gone wrong in their race. They benefit because someone like maybe you, we know you should be someone in the sharp end. If you've had a crash with somebody and you're now 30 seconds off the pace, rubbish. Fine, I get that, but also welcome to racing. Sometimes stuff happens. It's the driver's responsibility to avoid the drama. Fine. But there seems to be this belief in Creator Series that the cars need to be close. Like, if car close fun seems to be the prevailing thought. And with the best one in the world, there is a bit of a skill spread in Creator Series. Like, just because there's a late safety car, you're not going to get someone who normally finishes P15 finish on the podium. That doesn't happen. Like, okay, it may happen once in a blue moon, fine. But I don't think it's really happened at all. It just doesn't happen. So, so what? Okay, I'm now a minute off. Oh, great, I'm now only 5 seconds off. But, I'm still in P15. I've still got no pace.
But that's from a results perspective. I agree, because I do agree. I don't think many think like that. I think if you're using me as an example or yourself, then we might think like that because obviously we have the pace to win races. So therefore a safety car bringing everyone together obviously gives us a massive chance. Fine. But from the other standpoint of someone that's off the pace, it's more just that the clips generated and the content generated. I almost hate using the word content with these days because it almost feels like a bit of a taboo word in these kind of, when we're finding solutions for these races that it's like, for the content, so we're going to manufacture this, that, and the other. But it is a fair point that having gaps close and cars close together, even a crash or a crazy move or something, we kind of want that because that's creating the content that is why a lot of us race in the series. So, and that gets into the nuts and bolts of the issue is everyone wants to make different content, right? Like my content, certainly for 100% distance race, is strategic difference and stuff and having great racing with people and stuff. Whereas, other people might just want to just be close and, like you say, crashes and drama and stuff. But for me, that's not that. In my opinion, that shouldn't be what Creator Series goes for. They do 100% distance race for a reason. If you want to just be car close and crashing, go join open lobbies. That's what you want, not Creator Series. You don't want to race fairly in a long form race with other creators. You just want if car close fun. That's what you want. But just going back to the go on, I'll let you finish. I was just going to say, so I think we're both in agreement for once, I guess, on this that compromise on intentional safety car welcomes, but otherwise bin it. Yeah,
definitely. And then just going back to the wild card then. So again, I haven't seen the race, but I know the wild card was, as you said, you're not allowed to pit unless you've got a puncture, basically. So, and obviously you had to pit at some point in the race because there's you got to use both compounds. So you had to force yourself to get a puncture, essentially. You mentioned that you don't think it was very good. People get double punctures, DNFing. I think on the flip side, I think that's exactly what Creator Series should be about. I think as long as the competition is fair and fun, then happy days. I don't. Yeah. My only issue with this is that we could have done with knowing in advance that a double puncture causes that. And if you tell everyone, by the way, if you get a double puncture, you're out of the race. happy days. I would do it again. I think you mentioned there that we're not going to do it again because of that. I think as soon as you know that, that's fine now. We know that. So in which case, all right, I've got to try and wear just one tyre, just enough to get a puncture. That's great. And if you mess that up and you get a puncture, you're out of the race. Oh, well, you knew what was going to happen. You failed. See you later, buddy. See you in the next race sort of thing. I'm a bit sad I missed this wild card because it sounds like great fun. I think it'd be really interesting to see what strategies people come up with.
Yeah. So for me personally, I went from last to second. So I had a great race, and I'm saying I wouldn't want to see it again. I think when I was asked by my chat at the time about this wild card, and I saw a lot of viewers being like, "This is too gimmicky. This is a bit rubbish." In not just my own chat, by the way, just in general, from a bit of scanning I did, and I was okay with it. I was for it until I saw those DSQs. I fully get what you're saying, but I just think when there's a situation to RNG disqualify someone that is only, I think both Toms were DSQ'd like in the first 15 laps. So if we put that into a 100% race, obviously it could be a bit longer because tyre wear is less, but ultimately you could be missing half an entire race with no content because of some RNG DSQ from the wildcard. So that's the only reason I'm going from that viewpoint. I get what you're saying, but it's some tracks it's very hard to control getting perfectly above 75 on one tyre, waiting for the puncture while not letting any of the other tyres hit 75 is just not possible sometimes. And just to add as well, I saw Tom Bina, his tyres, one of the ones that punctured was way less than the other one that didn't puncture. So it is literally just RNG. So that's kind of why I'm against it. I think it was a good idea, and we got like probably the best clips and content from that first race. I loved it from my own perspective. It was hilarious. But then when I saw that, I was a bit like, I would have been pretty annoyed if I was DSQ'd halfway through the race for nothing I could do. So yeah,
I think as long as it's known, it's fine for a bit of RNG. I think that's what's fun, right? Like, get rid of purposeful safety cars. Safety cars are RNG. They are. They're random. You don't know when they're going to be. They're completely random. They might make or break your race. You've got no idea. That's RNG. And okay, I know you're talking about RNG of like literally being out of the race and not making any content. I do get that. And like I said, the only issue for me was that it was not known in advance, which is also hard to do because they could have tested it and found, oh, I only got one puncture. Great, that works. It is hard to do. But now knowing that you have to avoid a double puncture, I think announce that to everybody as part of the wildcard announcement. And it doesn't matter that the RNG, and it is a bit random, but you do also have control to some extent. Then it doesn't really matter at that point. I don't think RNG in itself is necessarily bad, particularly if you know that it's a possibility that RNG might happen and you can try and do things to mitigate that. Like safety cars, you think they're pretty common. All right, well, I'm not going to box then. I'm going to wait because there'll probably be a safety car, and I'm going to make sure I save my best tyres for the end of the race because there'll probably be a late safety car. That's RNG, but you're mitigating for the RNG, if you see what I'm saying. So I do agree. Not knowing it, it's a bit rubbish. You've got to sit out of the race. I get it. Perfect, though, for a double header because you only got to wait, maybe worst case, really 20 minutes. And then, which is not ideal, don't get me wrong, but it is what it is. I just think wildcards are perfect for a creator series. I really think that is what creator series should be. I think it's a content series.
Hold that thought.
Wait. I want to say one little thing. If it's the sort of thing that's going to do well in a YouTube video title, it should be in creator series. Simple as that. And that includes Drive to the Tires Explode. Hello, banger idea.
Okay, I completely agree. This was going to be the closing point, so I'm conscious we have overrun quite a bit.
Always.
So wildcards, I was going to say yes or no. It's obviously a yes from both of us. Moving forwards, do you think we should have wildcards every weekend?
No, absolutely not. I think wildcards, we had a lot this season, and I think wildcards are great as little ways to spice things up and ways to add a bit to create a series. And it's exciting then, right? If you get a wildcard one in every 5 races, it's exciting. Oh, this is interesting. This thing's happening this week. If it's every single week, people become tired of it. It then becomes too RNG, as you're saying, and too a bit of an asterisk on the whole season almost. Yeah. And we despite what some people say within creator series, I think the championship does matter. It's not a big deal. The individual races and individual content matters more, but the championship does matter, and that's what makes the creator series more fun. So I do think we have too many. I think, probably something like one in 3, 1 in 4 races, probably something like that with some sort of wild card would be where I'd aim.
I wouldn't be unhappy if we had 3 in a row because it's a triple header in real life. So for me, and I mean you'll be aware of this, but for viewers and listeners, I put forward a vote which I don't think anyone disagreed with. I think pretty much every driver unanimously agreed that I want a clear format for to make our lives easier and also viewers to understand what is going on before it's even that race weekend. Where if it's a race weekend, you have a wild card because you know the track. Why would we do that? It's then to stop people from potentially practicing and sweating like crazy for that track because they know it, and potentially gaining an advantage on other creators because we don't tend to do any practice for these races. Have a wild card on that weekend, spice it up a bit because we know the circuit. When it's not a known race weekends, have or not a planned weekends, have a mystery track, which is the current format. We don't know the circuit, and therefore that is the wild card. We have a normal race. Simple. That is effectively the wild card. Nobody knows the track. The excitement is around, oh my God, where's it going to be? An hour before, we all find out. There's the circuit. Let's go racing. I feel for me personally, it's a much better way of doing it. And there's an argument which was put forwards of, oh, well, if you don't have races or if it's a summer break or off season or whatever, well, in that case, just plan a calendar. Just put races in the calendar in advance where we know the track and then just have wild cards on that weekend. It's as simple as that for me. I think it's a really, really simple format fix that keeps it nice and straightforward for everyone to understand and also keeps the wild cards fresh and enjoyable without overloading everyone and seeming too gimmicky. I don't know if you agree with that. I feel like it's a fairly simple one, but
I'm not against that. I do think people in creator series are too scared of sweats. I'm not the sort of person that likes to practice. I've never enjoyed practice. Even when I'm back in my league racing days, I've never enjoyed practice. It's not for me. I don't like time trial. I don't like grinding on any game. It's not for me. Fine. And what we don't want is people doing 10 hours of practice and then dominating a race. Yes, fine. That's boring, obviously. But also, once it gets to a certain size, imagine someone's doing a stream on Thursday evening, Creator Series practice. That might get a lot of viewers because Creator Series is big and people want to see how they're practicing and stuff. I'm not fundamentally against it. I don't think we should start an arms race of practice, but I also don't think we should hobble everybody just because some people don't want to practice. And I would be one of those people. I wouldn't do a separate Creator Series practice.
Yeah, but if that did happen, I don't think that's ever happened where someone's like streamed that because ultimately, if you're making content and also it's going back to Creator Series, I don't think anyone would have a problem with that. If you decided to do a Creator Series practice stream and did 4 hours of time trials, I wouldn't be like, oh, well, hang on a minute, this is not on because you're.
Yes, you would. Then you'd all kick off. Everybody would kick off.
Absolutely not. Especially
if I went on to dominate the race, which would be rubbish. To be fair.
I would, if you went on to dominate the race, I'd be like, oh, this sweat with the practice. But I wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be like, oh, this is not on, this is not acceptable, we can't allow this. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you are making content, it's fine, no problem. It's where we did have others in the past, I won't name names, but we had other drivers in the past that were literally sweating and doing time trials and doing exactly that beforehand in the week, in the run-up to Creator Series with no other content, and that was their week. And we all agreed that we don't want that. So I just feel like if we relax that, then and we know the track and there's no wild card, then people are just gonna, I don't know. It's
simple, really, though, right? If we have someone in Creator Series that's dominating, whether it's through sweat or not, get them in the bin because Creator Series isn't supposed to be, although there is a bit of skill spread already. We want it close-ish for the win. You know what I mean? If like Brendan Lee raced for Hayden Gullis, imagine if he joins full time and literally tryhards it and wins every single race. That is dead for everybody, including Brendan. So it's a simple solution. If someone's sweating too much, well, look. To me, practicing is only an issue if they dominate. If someone practices like hell and is only capable of P15, practice away, mate. Improve as much as you can. Why not? Let them do it. There's no issue. The only issue is if they dominate. And if they dominate, as would happen regardless of practice, you would eventually just remove them from a Creator Series, possibly even mid-season if it's that bad. In reality, what you do is you'd say, look, mate, I'll be honest, right now, you're a bit quick for Creator Series. We need to give these other scrubs a bit of a chance. Difficult conversation to have, but is what it is. It would need to be had. And they might say, well, actually, fair. I've been practicing like 5 hours a week. I'll just chill out a bit. It'll make it a bit closer. And then if they do that, happy days. Happy days. It doesn't need to be artificially close, but really that's the issue. Domination is the issue, not practice. And I think we're solving practice rather than solving domination. Domination, the solution is tell that person to chill out or kick them out. That's the solution, not you're not allowed to practice, mate. Because imagine if, okay, actually, I've got a really good example for you, Safso, right? You may have seen last week, Safso was really struggling, right? He was literally like really upset on stream because oh, you haven't seen this? Okay. I know we're overrunning, but I think it's important to talk about this. So he was really upset on stream, like to the extent of like, pretty much crying, like really properly upset. And that was the week where the teammates swapped positions and I'm his teammate. So he felt really bad because he qualified 17th. So I was going to be starting 17th and he felt really bad. I must admit, I unintentionally stirred the pot. I didn't realize he was upset. And I jokingly said to him, like, oh, you suck, sort of thing. Like, to me, it was clearly a joke. He was obviously not happy that day. I chose a bad day to rib him a little bit, fine. And then I went on the stream and realized he was upset. And I was straight away like, oh, mate, like, I was completely joking. Like, I literally don't care. And that was serious. I don't think qualifying barely matters at all in Creator Series. I qualify because it's better for content, but I don't care about it. So I genuinely didn't care. So I felt awful, obviously. But he was really upset. But he wasn't really, there was the extra pressure there. He was qualifying for me. But that wasn't really what he's upset about. What he's really upset about was his slipping form, right? He's season 1 champion. He's won a handful of races. He's always been there or thereabouts at the sharp end, certainly in contention for podiums. But he's not at the moment and hasn't really been for F1 24. So for the last, 3-4 seasons. So that's difficult. And, it seems to be that basically, this is his hobby. This is what he likes to do. And he used to be all right at it. So he used to feel good about it. Now he's seems rubbish. That's harsh. I don't think he's rubbish. I want to be clear. But like he feels like he's doing rubbish now. So that's just detracting from it. And it's upsetting him. I think that's a completely fair feeling. But do you know what he said to me? Part of the reason he struggles is because he doesn't do practice because he knows that Creator Series is against sweating. So he would never do more than like 2 laps of practice before the race. And that is why he was struggling. We did a session afterwards, a private offline session afterwards, where we redid Japan. We did Japan time trial. I said, let's do time trial and let's use RaceNet where you can analyze deltas and gears and steering inputs and racing lines. And I was like, let's just both do a time trial lap. Let's spend 5 or 10 laps doing a time trial lap. Let's see what's going on. Because, I'm reasonably quick in Creator Series, but also I'm not an alien. I'm not at esports level that can do something stupid. So it should be a good comparison. And we compared, and until the final lap, he was only half a tenth slower than me. And even after my final lap, I think there was maybe 2 tenths in it, much less than is normal in Creator Series. And it's because he'd done practice, because that was the track we did just a few days before. That's all it was. So I said to him, and we analysed it as well. There was nothing wrong with his driving. I said to him, you're doing nothing wrong, which is fantastic news. There's nothing you're doing wrong. There's nothing wrong with your rig. There's nothing wrong with anything. You just got to do a bit more practice, get a bit more confidence. He had the Liam Lawson effect where he was, struggling. So he was lacking confidence. Then he was scared to go for moves and things like that, making him even slower. And he just had that domino effect. And that was because of lack of practice, because Creator Series discourages practice. So Safto is a perfect example of how Creator Series, in my opinion, have gone a bit overboard with like, you should not practice, never practice. No, Creator Series bad, don't practice. We got a guy who's literally getting upset because his form is bad because he feels pressured not to practice, which is too far the other way.
It's sad to hear because like he knows that there are others that practice off stream as well. Like a small amount, don't get me wrong. It might just be like, I don't know, for 20, 30 minutes the night before or something. But there are people that like, I don't know, get a setup or something like that, and then they've got something for the race, and it's fairly casual. For me, I do a community event the night before. So while it's probably about 80% laps under safety car and red flags, I still get time on the circuit, and I for Bahrain, I actually used the same setup as my community event because it worked really well. So I got to feel that setup was great and just went straight into Bahrain with no laps as a result. So, I think quite a wholesome way to end on. To be fair, wholesome Gillen moment.
Well, even more wholesome is I then invited him to join VSC Racing League, which was Bahrain, the same circuit as the race just gone, and he did pretty well. I think he got top 10 at the end of the race, despite a bit on sim damage and stuff. We have got some real sweats in that one. He did really well, and then went on to Creator Series, and he got top 10 in quali again. I think did he get P7, P8 in quali, something like that. So like P17 1 week, a week later, having done an hour or two of practice, P7. He didn't dominate. Practice didn't in any way negatively affect anybody. It just made him happier. It made him enjoy the racing more. Happy days. And my advice to him was just do an hour. Friday night, whenever you got time, just do a little hour. No one cares. An hour's fine. If you're doing 10 hours, it's an issue. An hour, like, do it. And he is now going to enjoy it more. So I do think we need to soften the attitude towards practice. But yeah, wholesome end. You'll love to see it.
I agree. And there we go, guys. Definitely way over run on the schedule. What are we like 30 minutes past? What is it?
Hour and a half it's been, yeah.
Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed all of the waffle. Of course, a reminder, you can catch us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music and Amazon as well. And YouTube, of course, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next episode, guys.